There's a phrase here, written on flags and chanted in stadiums. Nunca lo entenderán. They will never understand it. Only 3.5 million people, 2 World Cup titles, 2 Olympic football titles, a footballing legacy so far out of proportion to the country's size that the rest of the world still can't quite explain it. I don't understand it either, not until a quiet Sunday in Montevideo turned into a stage for an intense soccer rivalry. We arrived with Peace Boat on a Sunday in the capital of Uruguay, Montevideo. And it was a bit strange because it was very quiet. It was like a ghost town. The only other people that we saw were actually fellow Peace Boat passengers. But then later in the afternoon, we found a place where there was a lot of energy, where actually all the locals were gathering. Stay tuned to the end of the episode to see what happened. Montevideo on a Sunday moves at its own pace. The shops along the old town stay shuttered a little longer. The streets stay a little quieter, and for the first few hours or so, the only other people wandering the plazas seem to be fellow passengers off the same ship. It's not a bad way to meet a city. Slow, half empty, relaxed. The heat climbs fast, so it feels hot, like Rio de Janeiro again. But Montevideo saves its best version of itself for the late afternoon, when the temperature starts to feel comfortable. At the center of it all is Plaza Independencia, and at the center of that is a 17-meter bronze statue of a man on a horse. His name is José Gervasio Artigas. And in Uruguay, he isn't just a historical figure, he's closer to a national religion. Artigas led the revolutionary fight against the Spanish Empire in the early 1810s, and while Uruguay's actual independence came later, his ideals of federalism and liberty became the country's founding myth. He died in exile in Paraguay, never seeing the nation his ideals helped build. What you don't see from the plaza is what's underneath it. Beneath the statue, 2 black granite staircases lead down into the Mausoleo de Artigas, a guarded underground chamber where his remains rest in a glass urn, watched over around the clock by soldiers from the same regiment Artigas himself once served in. It's free to walk down and see it. I learned that too late, so unfortunately I didn't make it down there myself. Standing over the plaza is a building that looked oddly familiar, and it should have. This is Palacio Salvo. And if it reminds you of something from the Buenos Aires episode, that's not a coincidence. Across the river Rio de la Plata, considered the widest river in the world, stands its twin, Palacio Barolo, and both were designed by the same architect, an Italian immigrant named Mario Palanti. He gave each tower a lighthouse on top, and the plan, at least originally, was for the 2 beams to shine across the water and meet in the middle, welcoming ships arriving from the Atlantic. The math didn't quite work out, and the lights never actually met. But I liked that the idea existed at all. 2 cities on opposite riverbanks trying to signal to each other across the water. They really seem to like bronze statues of men on horses here, because a short walk away is Plaza Zabala, named for Bruno Mauricio de Zabala, the Spanish governor who founded Montevideo back in 1726 to keep the Portuguese from advancing further into the region. His statue sits at the center of the square, and it's easy to walk past without registering what it represents. That everything we'd already seen that day, the plazas, the old town, the entire city, traces back to a fort this one man had built 300 years ago. Not everything in Montevideo is statues and mausoleums. At one point, we went into a supermarket, and the most interesting purchase of the day was a can of Pringles. The chips were very tiny compared to the ones I'm used to in Europe, and noticeably saltier. Small detail, but it's curious. Countries often have their own versions of the same snack. We ran into something that was peculiar, the lock fountain. Local legend says that if a couple places a padlock engraved with their initials into the fountain, they're guaranteed to return together one day, their love locked in for good. Judging by how many locks were already crowded onto it, a lot of people have decided it's worth the bet. A few streets over, a mural caught my eye. 4 figures painted with halos like religious icons, except they're not saints at all, they're film directors. Luis Buñuel, Alfred Hitchcock, Federico Fellini, and Lucrecia Martel, painted onto the front of Cinemateca 18, one of the last surviving cinemas of the city's main avenue. I say surviving because many cinemas in the city have been converted into actual churches. By the time the sun started dropping, we found ourselves drifting towards the stadium, where Club Nacional de Football and Peñarol, Uruguay's 2 giants, and each other's oldest rivals were about to kick off. Their first match dates back to 1900, and since then, the 2 of them have completely swallowed Uruguayan football. Between them, they won the vast majority of every domestic title the country has ever handed out. Nacional was founded by university students who wanted a club for Uruguayan-born players, pushing back against the British-run team of the era. Peñarol grew directly out of one of those British clubs, a railway cricket team that slowly turned into a footballing institution. More than a century later, the divide still defines the city. And it's not just a local rivalry. Peñarol has won South America's Copa Libertadores 5 times. Nacional has won it 3 times. Each club has gone on to beat the champions of Europe for the Intercontinental Cup 3 times apiece. For a country with barely 3.5 million people, those numbers shouldn't be possible. Outside the stadium, a group of fans waved us over, draped in their colors, curious about the strangers in town. One of their flags read, "Nunca lo entenderán." They will never understand it. It's a phrase used in multiple ways, referring to their own national team and its astonishing track record, about disbelief worn as pride. How does a country this size become the first ever FIFA World Cup champion in 1930, then beat host nation Brazil in the most famous final in football history, the Maracanazo, 20 years later? How did they get 15 Copa Americana titles? How do you end up with 2 World Cup titles, 2 Olympic titles, as the tiniest country to ever win? The sentence also refers to how others will never understand their devotion and passion for their club. The fans we talked to didn't really try to explain it. They didn't need to. That's the entire point of the phrase. So what started out as a quiet Sunday afternoon ended up next to a football stadium with masses of energetic football supporters. It was impressive for me to learn how such a small country as Uruguay has such an amazing track record in football. This was our last stop in Uruguay, and we continued down south with the peace boat, back to Argentina, to the city of Ushuaia. And Ushuaia is the most southern city in the world. It's nicknamed the end of the world. So keep following that curiosity, come with me, and I'll see you there. Bye-bye.